So my idea is to use social media, basically squeeze every single thing I can out of a single, and create stories essentially so that people can, I don't know, see what's happening and to follow along, And so I'm kind of thinking them as like micro podcasts, and then maybe like down the line, using it to put like on YouTube for a longer form or something, if anybody cares. You know what I'm saying? It's a weird game because you have to have all this content in order for anybody to really think about it that much or pay attention to it. Sort of.
Isn't that wild?
It's cool.
You're right, though.
I mean, yeah, it is wild, but that's because everybody and their mom and their mother is making records, so it has to stand out somehow. You know what I mean? So I actually kind of enjoy the whole storytelling part of it. I'm also, I mix podcasts and stuff now, just as like a side hustle. My brother's and then another one.
Nice. Okay.
So it's kind of like a two birds with one stone kind of music producer, but also storyteller, so that people can kind of hear like what a podcast could, anyway. So I'm just trying to think on multiple levels. So it's basically like behind the music before anybody who knows who we are. So
sure.
But that's people love that idea. Is like just the process. You find that a lot. People love to just to vibe out to music, but as far as like content for Instagram or social media, like just constantly hounding people about your single, it's just so exhausting. But
Right.
if you can be creative about it and then make stories about it, then essentially like it because people forget things so quickly, you have to kind of keep it in their consciousness, right? So you can. So the idea is to release it. It's a month away from release, so it will be like the 18th of December.
Yeah.
And then up to that, slowly start introducing little pieces, and they don't have to be like perfectly like organized or necessarily like crafted. They're me. I'm DIY, dude. I pull shit out like pretty quick, just for whatever. And that's the vibe of it. So, but for me, I move on so quickly from stuff. The fact that I'm like sitting on this record for so long, I want it to mean something. So I'm being strategic about how I release it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, man, that makes sense.
And then if people care, they can go to my YouTube and be like, here's a conversation between the drummer and Rev, and they wax about the details, of how we did it, or we just are just stupid, just making stupid comments or whatever. But
totally. Yeah.
So that's kind of the thought, man. I don't know. Because it's like you put so much damn time into it, you might as well like promote it so people hear it,
Yeah, it's cool to let people kind of in a little bit, right? A little window into, and I think whether they know you and me or not, it's kind of a cool view. If you're a music fan, or even if you're not, right? It's just like something as people creating, which is neat, and I feel like it's not every day that you get to kind of hear the background. So
yeah, and we sit down and watch stuff on YouTube like this all the time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Like I would do that. I'd sit down, and if it was somebody I cared about and wanted to know a little bit of how the record was made, I'd be like, yeah, dude. I mean, like show me that Haim, behind the scenes on the Haim record, how they made it, or like what processes they used or whatever. That's right. People will actually watch that and care and are interested and can learn. That's the big thing with me. I really want people to see my trajectory, because I think it's a trajectory a lot of people go at. You kind of go hard. You make this record. 2013, we made a record. And, it wasn't time for me to promote it, or it wasn't ready. I was happy with it, but I was this artist, and I went from like, okay, somebody paid me. I had to pay everybody in that process. I had to pay the studio engineer, the mix engineer, the mastering engineer. I had to pay for the studio, and I was glad to do that. But at that point, when I looked at it, I'm like, man, I'm not paying anybody else to do this. I'm like, I don't want to be in a studio and not know what I'm doing again. I felt like that during that process.
Right.
And so from there, you watched the process with me. It lit a fire under my ass. I mean, you've seen like where I've been, kind of walking that process. You kind of been there throughout the whole thing,
I feel like you, me, and the whole like Justin, Bobby, like we all kind of went through that, like being thrown in this situation of like make something in 2 weeks with kind of little prep,
Right.
throwing all this money down, and you have exposure to like great gear, and there's actually something that I like about like making decisions and like just doing it.
Mm.
But dude, it was very hard for me with my experience level, even writing drum parts and knowing what's going to work in the studio, like what's going to be practical even for like editing.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds. And like, I don't know, dude, I love working on stuff from home. Like,
yeah, what we ended up doing is we paid a price, man, because we were in the studio burning money while we didn't know pre-production.
it's an expensive lesson.
It's an expensive lesson. Do your pre-production beforehand. Just sit down, demo it out, figure out where you want to go, like know the structure. I think, I talk about, and we've talked about a lot of that concept of simplifying things in order for you to be creative. So like, and I think I learned from you and Rudd really at J. Walter Songs, check him out. I think we learned like get the structure down, and you have to, within our context, it's like a Western indie rock pop structure, basically following the Beatles, or the Beach Boys or something. So you'd have a verse, an intro, verse, chorus, bridge, outro, or something like that. So then once you have that structure set up, then you get really creative with how you use that structure.
Right.
As you've done a few records and paid some money, you're like, oh man, getting that planning beforehand before you get into make anything is just so key. Because then you have the structure to be free with it.
And with your record, that was like, you kind of set that out. Like I felt from the beginning very strategically and strongly like, hey, I want to spend time sitting with the structure, big picture, working through lyrics. Thinking back to it, man, like we had so you had the loops, you had a loop set up pretty much for each track.
Yeah.
That was like the bed.
Mm-hmm.
You were mostly on keys, right?
Yeah, this whole record, I didn't play guitar at all. I wrote everything on keys, which was the first for me.
Which was different, right?
Yeah, I loved it.
Pre-production picture was like it's like loop machine, right? You on keys, we get Justin with guitar, and then I was really on bass. Really just mirroring what you were doing with the changes and messing with the feel a little bit.
Right.
But like mostly it was just to kind of see how does this feel with some low end, and the loops were all like really just bare bones, like just like a bed of like what you need to feel something, but like nothing more than that, like a lot of space.
Yeah.
To be able to write around, but to have something like a little inspiration, not like you're just you and your keyboard,
Right. And it was cool to play. I mean, we were in the world where, I was and am in the world a lot of times where I'm like playing everything, and that's cool, I guess, if you want to like show off to everybody that you can play everything. But I do it more out of necessity and budget than anything else. So it was really fun to have like other people play, because there's no way on earth that I could ever do what Justin did, the drums like you laid down. There's no way. I mean, I could sample or like program some drums, but it wouldn't be you. You know what I'm saying? Even though we had a specific way we wanted you to play, the important thing was to have the human swing to it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like it's funny, man, because thinking about it, we had like the loop structure, and I was thinking about this, like we sat with that for long enough where I kind of started to feel like the loop vibe as part of the songs in a way.
Right.
Even though it was like a tool to an extent of like songwriting tool, but it started to an extent where like started writing around it, I feel.
Yeah.
So when it got time to actually like do the live drum thing, my approach was definitely influenced by the pre-production just environment of like, hey, this is kind of, I started feeling those songs in that way of like, simple, tight pocket, like 2 and 4, just like backbone.
Yeah, man.
Kind of leaving it open, right, to what else could happen. And almost like when I approached the live drum thing, it was almost maintaining that and not trying to do too much more, right? But bringing like this human element, like kind of the imperfection to it, bringing like a little more swing. But honestly, I feel the drums are still really straight in a lot of ways, and like the percussion we always talked about as we were going through the pre-pro, like wanting a lot of percussion. I feel like that ultimately brought a lot of like the feeling to it too.
Yeah, totally.
Which came way later, honestly.
Right, way
That
later.
came
Yeah, we didn't even
after
think
a
about
lot
it.
of yeah. So it was almost like reproducing the loop environment with a person.
Yeah, I was like, basically play like you're a drum machine, but like you're a human and a drum machine. Because we
Yeah,
were
and
really
do
into like, the Purdy Shuffle and stuff like that, and like those really like super pocket drummers, you know.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
like every time we'd like be at your house, you would be like going bananas about this like gospel chops drummer that you found on IG. You're like, dude, you gotta check this out, and you would just be going nuts, dude, because somebody would just be like flamming all over the place. You're like, oh.
But my favorite part still with these guys is when they just sit and they sit back and they make it feel right. That's the whole thing, dude. You got to pick your spots too.
Tell me more. What do you mean?
I don't know, man. You know my kind of background, right, with drums. Like growing up, I was like Chops McGee. Like it was all about like how far can you push it with like speed and like what you're doing technically. And I had lessons with a guy who was a big band player.
Big band, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like swing stuff, and learning from him was where I kind of got away, or like started to learn like the importance of making stuff feel right.
Mm.
And with him it was like a transition from like that kind of extreme world, because I was listening to it. It was like a lot of metal, a lot of
Right.
like weird jazz stuff like just out there, and like the
Math, yeah,
hardcore
the kids call it math rock and stuff. Like the
math rock. It's
who
just
was the
nerds.
band we were into?
It's like Dillinger Escape Plan.
Dillinger,
Yeah.
Escape Plan, yeah.
Candiria,
Mm-hmm.
the all that stuff. So for
Which is
me,
awesome, dude. That stuff is incredible.
and I love it and I appreciate it. And so I had like that side of my brain, and then it was like, this guy trying to help me to feel. Like it was like,
Mm.
do you feel how this is different? Like letting the song breathe, giving room to people, like making the tune for like the showcase.
Yeah.
The thing with him is like he could do that for days, and it would feel so good. I would play the same beat as him, but it would feel like junk. It'd be garbage, right? And he did it in a way that just felt right. But
How old were you?
so this was like, I would say 16. Yeah, this is like early, like 15, 16. And so like, yeah, during high school, I kind of like, this was my exposure. But back to the whole picking your spot thing, like he could do that forever, right? But when he needed to set up like the big hit with like the horn section or whatever it was, like he would lose his mind with like the most perfect placed fill, right? And everyone, like all these like 15-year-olds would just like lose their minds, like, oh, Mr. Clark, he's like
Right.
6 years old. But like he knew like placement was so important, right?
Mm.
And so that's something that like I've definitely had to learn over the years. And I think with your record and some of these records we've done, like that's something that like the drums hasn't always been the instrument to do that necessarily, which I think is cool. And I think a lot with your record, like we captured, like I said, the loopy vibe, but did it in a way that was like we could work with it. Like if you wanted to mess it up, if you want to float things around and change up, you could take pieces of it, right, and work with it. So there was like definitely like a usability or just a practicality.
Yeah, I took the drums from one of these songs, and I reduce, reuse, recycle, bro. I mean, I put out a single, the off-brand single that I did. That's
right.
One of the drum parts from one of these songs. I can't remember which one, but basically just took that, and it was just so like funky, but not funky. You know what I'm saying? Like I guess that's kind of what you were saying. Like it's got a feel, and when people listen to it, they're like, "Oh, dude, that's funky," but you're not doing much, man. You're not really doing all that much. So how do you achieve that?
I feel like simplifying things was the biggest thing for me, and continues to be like a learning thing. I've realized like the less, like I can make it feel the best when I'm doing the least. Like it's like just having the necessity stuff in there. and then just floating in like, yeah, like ghost notes, man. I mean, this is like drumming,
Mm-hmm.
like nerdiness, but just
Do
like
it, man.
floating.
Geek.
It's like in between the beats, like having subtle stuff in there so people can feel the spaces. One thing that I've learned is like nothing kills groove more than like rushing stuff.
Mm.
And as humans, when there's space, we want to rush. Like it's just like natural. You want to get to the next thing. And actually going back to my teacher, Ken Clark, he like his whole thing was like, hey, the spaces are way more important than the notes that you play.
That's Miles,
Like,
man. That's Miles Davis.
right. So he obviously lifting. And he it was always like you need to like sing or breathe or like feel what's in between what you're playing. And actually, dude,
I hear
when
you.
when I record sometimes, I remember you saying you got to stop freaking whatever you're clicking under your breath, like you're
you go.
you're killing it.
It's
You're
like
killing
amazing, dude. It's like Oscar. What's that guy? The jazz player, Oscar Peters, man. He just
Peterson.
like can't.
Yeah.
Oscar Peterson. He can't help but
Yeah.
sing when he's playing. It's incredible. Because I'll be listening because I compress everything like a lot, and I hear this.
Yeah, so when
And
you
I'm like,
compress,
what is
that
that?
stuff's coming, getting amplified. Right.
That's
You're
great.
right, man. And it's like it's me like interacting with the space, I guess. Right? It's like just like
Yes.
feeling that. But yeah, dude, I don't know. I don't know if I really make stuff feel that good. I feel like, I feel like that's like little tricks over years I've tried to use. But
I love that maturity as a player because I had to go through that too. I'll never forget, like, I was in school, in college, and I was like really into like finger tapping on the bass. Like, and then
dude, finger tapping is for the bass, man.
hello. It's amazing. It's cool. I was
I love
really
it.
bad at it, but I got really into it. And then this guy and I'll never forget it. It's one of those moments that's just like, you were so upset at the time, but it like changed your life. He just looks at me. He goes, dude, busy much? And I was like, what do you mean? You know,
Wow.
he's like, just play the freaking bass notes, man. Like, why are you doing all this stuff? And I was like, what? You don't like my finger tapping? And then I was just like, okay. And then meeting Justin actually was really helpful. He's like, dude, kick drum. That's what the bass is supposed to do. Follow the kick, not this melodic stuff, and he was nicer about it than the other guy.
Yeah.
But both things like really helped me realize, okay, rhythm instrument. You are not here to show off. You're here to serve the song. And I feel like that's how you do it when you play. You serve the song. You're like, I'm not here to show how good I am. I don't care. I guess that's a part of your personality too, is that you have a servant's heart. But you do. I mean, in a lot of ways, you will, and I would call you ham bone all the time because you're the backbone to whatever it is. You just show up. You're on time, always. You're down. You're ready to participate.
That's my grandparents right there, that part. But dude, I want to say one quote that I really like is something that you have said to me in the past, and I'm gonna see if you remember this. It's the difference between like a good drummer and a great drummer. Do you recall
Do it,
this?
dude. I'm just
No,
I'm setting it up for you, bro. Go for it.
I'm gonna butcher this, but this is what it is, man. Like you're at a show, right? And this drummer's out there, and you kind of notice he does a few crazy fills, and like out of the blue, and you're like, all right, hey, man, he's a pretty good drummer, right? You've been to those shows.
Indeed, I have.
And you might go to another show, and you're just like dancing, and it feels right. And there may not have been a drummer. Who knows? You kind of leave the concert, but you had that time of your life. And then there was a drummer, and he was playing, and he just did his thing and made it feel right. And the fact that you didn't think about him, like that's a great drummer.
It's a great drummer, bro.
Am I saying that right?
You killed it, dude. You killed it. I love it. I was going to ask you, I was like, dude, does he know the great drummer quote? I'm sure he does. And that was someone that I think probably Ruddy told this other drummer in college. And then he told, anyway, it's true, man. And it's true. And that's why you had told me all the time you love listening to like modern country music because the drummers are just so pocket. I mean, that's what you would tell me is that the drummers And I've heard this a lot. Country drummers are like on all the time, and they just know where to hit, like where they belong. They just kind of know, and those are the guys who get all the jobs.
Yeah. It's these guys who can slide into like, it's anything from the country gig to like the pop gig to the R&B, whatever. It's a lot of the same dudes who just like know how to make it feel right and to pick their spots and to just sit in the pocket. Yeah. And it's impressive, man. I mean, these are guys who could go for days over the bar line with their chops, right? And they're choosing and they're committing to. I think at a certain point you start realizing like that loses its like, it doesn't feel right to you.
Right.
You know, it's like, which is a weird thing. Like, I don't know. You probably look back, you're like, how could I ever, like the finger taps was had its moment, but
yeah,
you know.
You're
like, right,
dude,
man. It's
Victor
like,
Wooten, bro. Jaco Pastorius, ever heard of him? They're like, bro, just play the root note. That's it. In time with the kick. And I'm like, all right, I'll try. And it took me forever, man. It literally still takes me forever. Like, dude, the kick is there. Play the bass note on the kick. And you won't, as a bass player, I played for 20 years or something. Insane. I still have a hard time with the kick and the bass. It's like the job of the bass player, and still like it's like so mind. I don't know, just to get into that pocket in that rhythm. And when you listen to like reggae records, man, like dub records from back in the day, it's like they are just playing the same thing for like 3 to 7 minutes, but it is like just locked in, and that's because the point is that people want to dance. And then when you change up that one thing, like the 17th time you played it, people know something changed, and they're like, oh, and then it adds a flourish to it, you know?
Right. Yeah, and having the awareness of like knowing when to do that and knowing when people are feeling it too, and like being able to just like stick in that. I mean, that takes, I mean, I don't know how to do it, man.
Yeah. But I guess when we did the loops, we liked... what we kept saying is that it doesn't go anywhere dynamically. It's the same thing over and over again because and so we kind of got into this like My Bloody Valentine, like shoegazer kind of space because it was just the same beat the whole time. And then when we went to play, I think what we kind of decided was like so that's what you did. You just kind of like would open the hi-hat just to like a wee bit, or like you would do a little bit of ghost notes here, or you would do kind of like a bigger fill, like it's going to go into something major, and then you would just deaden the kick completely and it would just be back to the pocket. And as I've been mixing it, I've listened, and some of even the critiques of the mixes are like, dude, it sounds great, but the drums don't change very much. So then sometimes I would just mute like a bar or two and then bring it back in. And even that, like that structure, that kind of concrete foundation is always there. And I mix the drums super hot, actually. That's what other people say too. Like the drums are up front. And I was thinking, man, that's weird. I guess I didn't really expect them to be, but they're hot. They're a part of the vibe of the song, you know? It's not just like super reverbed out, or like you would find in like a shoegaze or like slow dive or something like that. Those drums are big-ish, but you know what I'm saying? Like they're more kind of in the background, which is sort of what we were thinking. But when I mixed them, I'm like, dude, these drums actually sound really freaking good. Lou did us a solid, man. Or whatever we did in that, in you know, just getting those where they were, it was like a step above recording your drums in your living room. You know what I'm saying? Like everything else was recorded in the bedroom, but for whatever reason, getting that like that live studio sound specifically for those drums, I think it really changed. It upped the level, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I was really happy with the sounds we got there, and we did it really quick too, right? I mean, we were kind of like, what was it, like a day or two?
Dude, how many? I think we went in to see if we could do the whole experiment of bringing in the computer and then setting it up through the tape machine. That's what we were hoping to do. But you remember his board was like super buzzy, so we didn't even go through the board. And then he was just like, all right, well, I guess, let's use the mics. He knows the placement. He's been doing this for years. He's got decent treatment in the room. And I think legit, dude, we did it I don't think we went home and came back, did we? I think we just did it in a day. I remember going there twice, but once was to see if our experiment would work.
We could talk about the like the setup and stuff if you want.
I think we have a lot of really great stuff here that I can use, but because, man, I've never heard you talk about drums like that, which is kind of cool. Maybe I should have asked you that before.
It's funny because no one's asked me. Then you have me thinking, like, after work, I was like, what do I? Yeah.
I love it. It's beautiful. It makes so much sense to me. And I think that's why people, I know you're not playing like a ton right now, but I think you giving yourself like a week of playing again, you could be ready to go back in the studio, play to a click track and do the whole 9.
Kevin, dude,
If you
I
wanted
don't
to.
know. I have played drums twice this year. I played at City Life when Andrew was leaving in the winter, and then I filled in a few weeks ago. And
How
man,
was it?
I missed it. I missed it so much, dude. But more so than the drumming, bro, it's just playing music with people. It's just like the connection and like playing off each other. And
would you be down with doing like, if you had like turned one of those rooms into a recording setup, would you be interested and have fun doing session drumming? Or is it more like I need someone in here? Because you could get a pretty, I mean, if you got that Apollo quad, you set your some mics up, you could feed any song to yourself and that could be a little side gig. I mean, if you pushed it, or just for fun too. Like if I say, hey dude, I'd love that, man. I have this idea. Can you just throw down like some drums over this?
Yeah, man. I definitely like, I'm working the place out. I'm definitely like want to, basically this room I'm in that I showed you and the one behind it, I want to make into just like, music, music space.
Because you got the bug a little bit, huh?
Yeah, I'm definitely like, especially the past few months, like just, and I know I've been sending you random crap, but I'm definitely like back into nerd zone with the production stuff and like listening a lot to what people are talking about. And I just saw Mike Dean and Kenny Beats, my dude that I will send you. They just collabed apparently on live, so I'm gonna watch that after this probably.
That's awesome. It's a kind of a fun way to escape, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it has been my like Netflix, honestly.
Yes, I love it.
Because I don't really do. I don't even have the TV set up here yet. Like I'll eventually do it, but that's really it, man. It's like catching up on the. I don't know if you want. It was that whole like they had the battles, like these thousands of producers just like making beats, and it's so honestly inspiring hearing these kids. It'd be like some random like 15-year-old from Denmark.
I love it, dude. So he does. So Kenny Beats, he has like a whole like, he's got basically like a brand and stuff, right? I mean, isn't that is his YouTube thing kind of the only thing he does?
Yeah.
Obviously, he produces big name people, but like he was.
Yeah.
I think his shtick, I mean, he's got a great personality. He's just fun, and he knows all the homies, so it's like kind of fun to see who shows up, and he seems to have a lot of respect and stuff. A lot of people respect him.
Yeah, like I feel like what's crazy with him is he, I guess, had those kind of placements before, and then he was kind of coming up, and he's young too. I think he's like in his 20s still. But,
get out of here, really?
Yeah.
So cool.
But with COVID, so he was doing the cave. He was doing the cave thing already. I don't know if you saw that, but where
bring a rapper in and they would do something kind of live. I've seen a few of those. They're great.
Which, dude, I almost sang that too because it's so well done, like the video, like the everything about it. But
they just set up some GoPros. Basically, they get like 3 GoPros and then they just riff, and they pay somebody to edit it. I would imagine. Right. I don't think he's probably sitting down editing it. Not at this point anymore, I guess.
Yeah, he has this guy who does all that, right? And then same for the Twitch thing. He just like when COVID hit, he was like, I want to start doing this. And I think it was originally going to be just like a 1 or 2 time thing just for fun, and if a few people wanted to do it, and it just like blew up. And bro, have you watched American Idol before? Mm-hmm. I felt like I was watching like an American Idol finale when I was watching the finale. Dude. Because I was like, oh, I know these kids now.
See, this is the beautiful thing about the time we live in, right? Is that, and I've said this before, probably, I've said this 1,000 times. I kind of rehash everything, but my nephew was basically saying like, well, in the future, and he's 16, 17 now. At the time, he was like 13 and just like, smarty pants. And he's like, well, the future is going to be basically everything is going to be automated. So the only thing that's really going to matter anymore is entertainment. And I'm like, you're a kid. What do you? And then I'm thinking, dang, dude, that's a pretty interesting concept. Is that like, if everything does get taken care of course we live in a fallen, broken world, and people will always, there will be the haves and have-nots, unfortunately. But like, if you can get a lot of people to have their basic needs taken care of and are able to create, and do like what their soul's work wants to do, if you could take care of all the other things, like entertain. So the idea of like everyone having a YouTube and an IG and like creating content and crafting their brand and all of that. I'm listening to a lot of different people talk about it. And it's one of those things, it's like, it's unique now. There's less gatekeepers. So a dude like Kenny Beats, he's working in the scene, right? I mean, I guess he's working with big artists, so there's obviously big labels involved and stuff. But then he's also like, nah, dude, I got my own brand. I'm gonna float this like Twitch channel and this YouTube channel, and it's blowing up. People are insanely excited about it. And he's doing that all with like a GoPro, and then what he does on a regular basis, which is just be himself, which is just kind of cool that's available to do that, And they say that about Joe Rogan. I mean, Joe Rogan's doing what we're doing right now, but he gets $90 million. I mean, he talks to like way more amazing people than the two of us, arguably, but what he's getting is like 90 million bazillion dollars just to sit down and talk, like because he's built a brand. And you even hear him say, he's like, I don't think too much about it. As soon as I start thinking about it, it's over. And I don't want to, like accept how much like responsibility I have. I just want to have conversations. And that's what's magical about this, is just us sitting and talking, and me engaging with you and you engaging with me. And people love it, man. Like just millions of listeners. Right. It's just it's an interesting thing. There's no one like really calling the shots on what you can and can't do. I guess it's all about sort of like the audience, I guess, or placement, or like somewhat luck, I guess. If a guy like Lil Nas X can just like he knew how to use TikTok, man. And then then he gets, I want to call him Macho Man Randy Savage. What's his name? Randy Cyrus? No. Miley Cyrus's dad.
Whatever. The
Billy
country,
Ray, brother. Billy Ray Cyrus is on this kid's. He's young. I mean, Lil Nas X is young, but this dude is on now. That guy knows enough about business to be like, okay, I'm going to jump on with this kid because he's taken off. And then they're going to do all this stuff. It's like crazy time to be alive.
I would say real quick with Kenny, I feel like he's a crazy mix of like the personality with like the technical ability, with like making the most of a awful situation. Yeah. Like a perfect storm of those things. But dude, I just want to say, between you and me, you have personality, bro. Like I send you that stuff because I'm kind of like, bro, I feel like Kev could like needs to get him alive, man. Like this is.
And that's interesting that you say, because a part of the whole calling thing for me to figure this out has been dealing with coming to grips with the demons of like how I felt like I've wasted the last 10 years of my life, other than meeting my wife and then meeting you guys. It feels like, what have I been doing? And the more I see that's a really flawed mindset. Not just because like all the gurus out there say nothing is wasted, but the person, the relational skills, the empathy, the connection with people who, have been going through. Obviously I was so just if anybody's listening or cares, I was a social worker for 10 years and worked in different elements, from a homeless shelter to like at-risk youth to after school programming, and then also helping people find employment. So like all those skills of that connection, and those have just it's a relationship industry. That's what I hear all the time. It's just like, it's built on relationships. So people will want to work with you because you care about them. Like, sit down and call some homie that I didn't even meet. I found him on IG, and I'm like, dude, he is a musician in COVID-19. That dude is suffering right now. Call him and see how he's doing. And I do.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, dude. Like what kind of connections can be made through that. And then, of course, you're thinking down the line business wise. But if it's a relational industry, then like that's what you're doing. You're investing in people because you don't want to invest in someone who's making art that you don't care about or you don't vibe with, I guess. I guess you could do that for a paycheck if you needed to. But people aren't going to want to share their art with you if you don't like know them, care about them, find out why they did things, why they wrote this song. Even if it's a song you don't really care about, they can care about it. So you have to, if you're a producer or in the like service industry like this, you have to care about that. You have to know the background.
Yeah, there's like a level of trust there and like letting someone in, you know.
Yes. Kevin Daly
And
said that to me, dude.
oh, interesting. Yeah.
He said it's like someone's handing you their children. Like don't sleep on that, dude. Someone is giving you a song. It's from their soul. They've created it, you know.
Right.
They produced that and it's part of them. So you better be treated sacredly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times where I haven't, you know. I'm like, oh, I got this. I can take this and make it cooler. I got you, bro. And they've come back and said, nah, actually, I kind of liked it how it was before you did. You did your thing on it. And I was like, oh, wow, I thought I was cool.
I want my kids back.
Yeah, thanks, dude. You didn't really take care of them. They lost an eye. They lost a finger. They came back with like half their head shaved off. Sorry, bro.
Yeah.
Don't trust you.
Bad haircut.
I wanted to ask one thing and then we'll wrap, dude. Can you talk a little bit technically about how we set up the drum? Like how did you set up the drums?
Yeah.
Like when we went through it, and you can even go a little what the kit was, and then like you don't have to go like into like labeling the cymbals or whatever, but you know the type of kit we used, and then kind of the miking techniques.
Yeah, definitely. So it was for sure like a less is more scenario.
Yep.
So with the kit I had it's like a late 60s Ludwig kit. It's a 14-inch floor tom, 12-inch rack tom, 20 kick, so it's pretty small. It's basically like a jazz set from that time.
You bought it off Justin Barney, right, my buddy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so which was cool. It's like a connection through Ruddy, and he had it on reverb, and then I'm really glad it worked out. The thing sounds great. It's that 3-piece. Then I have which I use. It's like it's a Ludwig Superphonic snare, which I have like a new model of it. But this is like the snare that folks used all through like 60s, 70s for everything. It was like the steel snare of that time. And so actually like the reason I was interested in getting that like in this age was I grew up playing those like in school.
Oh,
so like when
cool.
I did all the big band stuff, that was like the snare, and at the high school was like from yard sales and stuff. They had a bunch of them.
Great.
that my teacher would just pick up,
like vintage ones. That's so cool.
Yeah, so I've always like played those, and they're not like as warm as like a wood snare. That's really like you have more. It's like more cut like live, and it's a little more aggressive.
Right.
But I think they record really nice too, and it was basically the snare that was recorded like during that whole time as well, and through today. But so those were the drums, and then we use like there's this it's like a ring that you can put on the snare, and we actually use in the floor tom too.
Yeah.
We call it a big fat snare ring.
Big fat snare ring. Okay. And what is it?
Yes.
What did it do?
Yeah. So this guy, like it, it kind of transforms the drums into like, it's sort of like times warp you to like the 70s.
Right.
Like it's like totally takes out any weird rings. It's similar to like if you were to throw a sheet or something on your drums.
Yeah, because back in the day we would just cover you in a sheet. There's so many not cover your head and stuff because you have to play with the drums, but like there would just be this amazing I just remember
that might have been better for everyone too, but
this picture of you look like you're wearing a dress because it's like your feet are underneath this sheet. And the sheet is covering the snare in the rack tom and the floor tom. It is like completely covered. And you're basically like tucked under the sheet. And you're like
Right.
playing with it. It's like, oh man, I can't get
Right.
that out of my head.
Yeah, under the Chiefs of Eagles, we say. But yeah, the thing is with that is the big fat snare like achieves a similar thing, right? Where it's like you're just like deadening stuff to a degree where you still have the like the body of the drums. So it's not like you're like totally like taking the character away, but it's also like a utility thing too, right? Because it's like it just makes it so much cleaner to record.
Yeah.
So it just happened to be like that's kind of the vibe we were going towards, and it's like such a win-win
Great.
situation. I threw a bunch of the moon gels on these little, they're like little rubber, like putty things you can put on the heads as well to kill some of the like funky overtones that you don't want.
Right. So we just like killed all the drums essentially.
That's right. Yeah.
And then what did we do with the cymbals? Keep going. Sorry, I keep interrupting. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah. I mean, the cymbals was so limited. Like the hats were on most songs, right? But in terms of like rise and crashes, dude, I don't know if you know this, but like I have this old like K Zildjian ride that I had there, and I think we used a little bit, but most of what we used was like I bought in high school off eBay. Like someone was selling like a pack of like 5 cracked cymbals. I don't know if I ever told you this, but so when I was like 17, it was like super cheap, and I was like playing all the metal stuff and like breaking cymbals. So I was like, might as well just like use these. So I'm not like breaking legit cymbals. So I still had a bunch of those, and so on other side is the one track where I think we actually had like a ride throughout. I'm playing on one of those cymbals that I bought back then. So it's really like dead. It has a little bit of a sizzle. It has like a few cracks in it, type of thing.
Yeah.
We also taped the cymbals.
We used like a ton of masking tape.
Yeah. So that like helped kill a bunch of the overtones.
Was there any rhyme or reason to that, or you just kind of choose what sounds good?
Definitely trial and error. Like I feel like you can't do it until you get into the room, right? So you had to see how that was recording going in. And I kind of remember because you were at the board and kind of able to hear. Right. It's a little tough when you're like playing the drums because there's a certain amount of room noise you're getting. And I kind of remember you going through, hey, let's add some, let's remove some tape to get to a point where it's like you can still feel the cymbal. It's not totally dead, but it's not like you're washing out the room.
Right.
Know? And that helps also because we weren't close miking all the drums, right? Like we did a mic on the snare, on the kick, and then I think we just had overheads.
That's it, dude. Four tracks.
Yeah.
For the whole record. I mean, every drum sound is 4 tracks. So we didn't mic underneath the snare. We didn't mess around with the hi-hat mic. We just kind of kept, I guess they say you can mic everything, but if the player is just doing too much, then you have a lot of too much to work with, right? But if you can do like a very simple recording, then and the drummer does what he's supposed to do, then you have great stuff to work with, and you don't have to be sifting through 6 to 12 or 8 like channels.
Yeah. So it's funny because like so much of this is like just making it practical, but it lined up with like the feel. So it really was like, it's going to be a pain in the butt to like mess with cymbal bleed later.
Right.
But we don't want that washed out feeling for this. Like it really is like we wanted to keep things, again, going back to the pre-pro stuff, we wanted to keep it tight, loopy, dry, dark,
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things we did for treatment to try to achieve that.
We were thinking more like, less Sigur Rós and like more, I don't know, Fleetwood Mac, Although Fleetwood Mac, that dude does a lot of flourishes, but, we were thinking obviously, or maybe, what's that other, Steely Dan, like the super pocket 70s stuff.
I love that you said Fleetwood Mac too, because that is like so much of how I thought about those parts too. Like, Holy Roller, like that whole kind of like groove.
Yeah.
Was totally like imagining I was like playing in that time.
Yeah.
Even with the little fills and just the vibe, like this, it's not like you don't hear that groove today a ton. It's
like a shuffle almost.
Yeah, yeah. But so like part of that was like trying to honor like that time, like what they were doing with the drums. Like we sort of tried to an extent, like capture some of that with the
Man, and
lyrics we heard
that
everything.
track literally feels so good to me. Like still, and lyrically, I kind of like. I realized when I started to mix it, like I didn't even sing the last part of the bridge. Like completely didn't even sing it. So like, there's no like, there's just like no lyrics. I just like
Really,
fade out. So then I've had to like cut and paste stuff and put it in there. But the feel of that and his guitar solo on that song, how it comes in, and I was like really trying to be really careful about how I mixed it, just because I wanted that specifically just to ring his guitar. And I'll send you the mix of it, but
I can't wait to
yeah,
hear that.
it's just so beautiful, and it's very simple. I didn't try to go over the top with the stuff, even when I added some synths and Mellotron or like whatever to it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
wanted that feel. It's like the really locked in bass, that drum
Yeah,
shuffle, and then these two voices kind of singing in harmony this like very simple melody. So I think
right.
it sounds great. And yeah, that beat, I don't know, man, for whatever reason, I mixed the drums so hot because I just loved what they did. At first I didn't think they were gonna be a huge part of the songs, and then when I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting with them, I'm like, this is a part of it. So I really do appreciate the time and energy. And even if it felt like you didn't put a ton of thought into it, just showing up and doing the work, and then just like having that kind of principle of like, you sit back until you give them a little bit. And then when you got that opportunity to give them something, like, don't give it all. Just give like that little, that taste, and then, that
Yeah,
they know that raging wild drummer's inside, but you have enough control to tame him. I feel like that's kind
yeah,
of how you play in general.
yeah. No, I appreciate that, man. And yeah, I feel like a lot of these tracks, there's like an exercise in restraint, right? And
Yes.
but it's like to allow things to breathe, allow something else to shine. Take, and I think there's something cool about like taking someone close to something. And then, I don't know. There's something about that appeals to me, just like then bringing it back. Um,
Mm,
but
I love it, dude.
yeah, man.
Thank you much, dude. Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, dude. I want to hear some more mixes for real, dude.
Yeah, I'll send them to you. Um, uh, yeah, I'll send you Holy Roller. I get the last one, so I'll let you hear that. But I'm super grateful. So if anyone's listening, this is the end of our conversation. Peace.
Peace.